poor farmer hid a wounded princess, and the chief paid all his debts. Ramu was a poor farmer who lived in a small, dusty village surrounded by fields that were often dry and cracked under the sun. His house was little more than a mud hut, with a roof patched with straw and old leaves. Inside, his family huddled together every night for warmth. Despite the hardships, Ramu never complained. He woke up before the sun rose each day and went to work in the fields. His hands were rough and calloused, and his clothes were patched and worn, but his spirit remained strong. Ramu's life was not easy, but he had to feed his mother, his younger sister, and his little brother, who were too young to help much with the farm. Most days the crops barely grew enough to feed the family, and he had to borrow seeds and tools from the village chief to keep the farm running. The chief was a harsh man who demanded repayment without any delay. Ramu owed him more than he could ever imagine paying back. Each visit to the chief's house left Ramu with a knot in his stomach, for he never knew whether he would face anger, humiliation, or punishment. Despite all these worries, Ramu loved his life in the village. He loved the sound of the birds at sunrise and the smell of wet earth after rain. He enjoyed the small moments with his family, like sitting by the fire in the evening, sharing a simple meal of rice and vegetables, or listening to his mother hum an old song while mending clothes. Even in hardship, there was warmth and love in their home. One evening, as dark clouds rolled over the sky, Ramu finished his work in the fields. The wind had started to pick up, and it smelled of rain. He decided to walk to the nearby forest to check on his goats, which often wandered too far. He carried a small lantern, its light flickering in the growing darkness. The forest was quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl. Ramu knew these woods well, but even familiarity could not take away the sense of unease he felt as night approached. Suddenly, Ramu heard a faint cry. It was almost like a whisper carried by the wind. At first he thought it was an animal, maybe a fox or a deer. But the sound was too soft, too human. He paused, listening carefully, and then followed it. The path twisted and turned over roots and stones until he reached a small clearing. There, under a large tree, lay a young woman. She was pale and weak. Her clothes torn and her hair was damp with rain. Her eyes were closed, and she shivered as the wind brushed against her. Ramu's heart raced. He had never seen anyone like her in the village. She was not dressed like the villagers. Her clothes were fine but damaged, and she carried an air of importance even in her helpless state. Without a second thought, Ramu ran to her and gently lifted her into his arms. She was surprisingly light, and though she groaned softly, she did not resist. He carried her carefully back to his hut, feeling a mix of fear and urgency. What if the villagers saw her? What if the bandits who had left her like this returned? Back at the hut, Ramu placed her on a blanket he spread on the floor. He rushed to fetch water and cleaned her wounds as best as he could. Some cuts were small, but one on her leg looked painful and deep. He tore a piece of cloth from an old shirt to make a bandage. All the while the woman lay quietly, occasionally whispering words he could not understand. Her voice was soft, almost musical, and it made Ramu feel that he must protect her at all costs. Ramu's family soon noticed him moving around the hut with unusual urgency. Desper, his mother, came over, worried.
Ramu, what is it?
Why are you running around like this in the storm? She asked. Ramu hesitated. How could he explain that he had found a strange woman wounded and alone in the forest? He could not tell them everything, not yet. He simply said, "Mother, help me carry her inside. She is hurt and needs our care." His mother and siblings obeyed, though nervously. The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing a gaze full of fear and confusion. She tried to speak, but her voice was too weak. Ramu offered her water and encouraged her to rest. Night fell outside, and the storm began to pour rain in sheets. Thunder rumbled, and lightning lit the sky. Ramu kept watch, staying by her side, afraid to leave even for a moment. He thought about the chief and the debts, about the villagers, about the danger of hiding someone in his hut. But none of these fears could outweigh the need to keep her safe. Days passed, and the woman slowly began to recover. She could sit up, though she still moved carefully. Ramu brought her food and fresh water and made sure the fire kept them warm. He noticed her eyes often scanning the room, alert and watchful, as if she feared being discovered. Ramu never asked questions. He waited for her to speak when she was ready. His only thought was to protect her until she could be safe. The villagers began to notice that Ramu was behaving differently. He spent more time in the forest, returned with wet clothes, and seemed distracted. Rumors started to spread. Brace. Some villagers whispered that he had found treasure in the woods. Others said he had angered the forest spirits. But no one could guess the truth. Ramu's secret was safe, for now. At night, as he sat by the fire, Ramu thought about his life. He had never been brave in any grand way. He had struggled, yes, but he had never faced danger directly. Now, carrying this young woman into his hut, risking his life and the safety of his family, he realized what courage really meant. It was not about fighting or winning. It was about doing the right thing, even when it was hard. The woman, though silent most of the time, began to trust Ramu. She accepted his care, and small smiles sometimes flickered across her face when he spoke gently, or when his younger brother made her laugh. Ramu felt a strange sense of purpose. For the first time, he was not just living to survive, he was living to protect someone else, someone who could not protect herself. Even as he worked tirelessly to heal her, Ramu never stopped worrying. The storm of his debts loomed over him, and the chief's temper was unpredictable. He knew that if anyone found the woman in his hut, his life could be destroyed. But despite the fear, he remained determined. He could not leave her in the forest. He could not turn his back on someone in need. By the end of the first week, the woman could speak a little. She told him that she had been traveling to another kingdom when bandits attacked. She had escaped but was badly injured and alone. Ramu listened carefully, nodding. He said little but promised silently that she would be safe in his hut. That promise became the anchor of his days. Each morning he tended his small field, carried water, and mended fences. Each evening he returned to the hut to check on the woman, bringing whatever food he could find. Even when his back ached and his hands were sore, he continued. The village remained oblivious, the chief's anger a distant thunder, and the woman's life hung in balance. Ramu knew that these were dangerous days, but he also knew that this was his moment to do something truly meaningful. In this small hut, in a poor village, under the threat of storms and debt, Ramu discovered courage, responsibility, and compassion.
He realized that even a poor farmer could make a difference in someone's life.
And little did he know that the woman he protected would soon change his life in ways he could never imagine. Days passed, and the young woman grew stronger under Ramu's care. Her face no longer looked as pale, and the dullness in her eyes began to shine with life again. She could now sit on a stool instead of lying on the blanket all day, and she was learning to walk carefully around the small hut. Ramu watched her recovery with quiet satisfaction. Every day he brought her fresh water, cooked simple meals, and cleaned her wounds. Even though he was exhausted from working in the fields, he never complained. His own fatigue seemed small compared to the danger the woman had escaped. The woman spoke very little at first. She only whispered her name and a few words about where she had come from. But gradually she began to trust Ramu and his family. She told them that she was a princess, traveling to another kingdom to attend a festival when bandits had attacked her. The memory of the attack still frightened her. Breath. She would flinch at sudden noises and shiver when she remembered the chaos in the forest. Ramu listened patiently, never interrupting, and reassured her that she was safe now. Ramu's family, too, had grown attached to her. His mother prepared food carefully for her, chopping vegetables and cooking rice, making sure the woman ate enough to regain her strength.
His younger sister brought water and cleaned the small hut every day. Even his little brother, who often hid from work, found ways to help by fetching firewood or running errands for her.
The family's small acts of kindness made the woman feel welcome, and she began to smile more often. It was the first time in many days that she felt safe and cared for. Ramu would often sit outside the hut in the evening, looking at the forest as the sky turned orange and pink with the setting sun. The wind rustled through the trees, and the birds chirped softly. Sometimes he would glance at the woman through the window, watching her practice walking or reading from a small book she had brought with her. She seemed determined to recover quickly, but she never forgot the fear she had experienced in the forest. Ramu admired her courage. Despite being young and fragile, she faced each day with patience and strength. One morning while Ramu worked in the field, he noticed that the woman had ventured to the edge of the hut on her own. She held a small stick for support and was walking carefully. Ramu felt a mixture of pride and concern. He ran to her and offered his hand. "You are doing very well," he said softly. She smiled and took his hand, feeling safe and encouraged. It was a small moment, but for both of them it felt significant.
The woman also began to help Ramu with small chores around the hut.
She carried water from the well, swept the floor, and helped prepare meals. These activities strengthened her body and gave her a sense of normalcy. Ramu's family was amazed at how quickly she adapted, and they began to treat her as one of their own. Ramu, however, remained cautious. He knew that keeping her hidden was still dangerous. If the bandits returned or if villagers discovered her presence, the consequences could be severe. One afternoon, a sudden noise startled both Ramu and the woman. A loud crack of thunder echoed through the forest, and the wind shook the trees violently. The woman flinched, pressing herself against Ramu. He held her close, whispering words of reassurance.
"It's all right," he said. "You are safe here."
"Nothing can harm you now." She nodded, trusting him completely. That moment, Ramu realized that the bond between them had grown stronger. It was no longer just a matter of survival. It was a connection built on trust and care. Despite their growing comfort, danger was never far away. One evening, while Ramu was bringing firewood from the forest, he noticed unusual footprints near the hut. They were fresh and looked like they had been made by people passing through the area recently. His heart sank. He immediately rushed back, worried that someone had discovered the woman. When he entered the hut, he found her looking out the window, worried and alert.
Ramu quickly assured her that everything was fine, but he could see the fear in her eyes.
The memory of the bandits was still fresh, and he realized that protecting her would require constant vigilance.
Ramu began to take extra precautions.
He made sure the doors and windows were secured every night and taught the woman simple ways to hide if someone approached. He also instructed his family to remain quiet and discreet, keeping the woman's presence a secret.
These measures made life slightly more tense, but they were necessary for her safety. Ramu accepted the risk because he knew that saving her life was more important than anything else.
Over time, the woman shared more about her life. She told stories about her kingdom, her family, and the festivals she had attended. Ramu listened with fascination, imagining a world far beyond his village. He had never traveled beyond the nearby town and had never met anyone of such importance. Yet despite her royal background, The woman remained humble and grateful for his care. She spoke of her fears and her hopes, and Ramu realized that bravery did not always mean fighting. It sometimes meant surviving and trusting others. One day, while the woman rested near the window, Ramu sat beside her and asked gently, "Do you miss your home?" She nodded, a faint smile on her lips.
"Yes," she said.
"But I am safe here. You have saved me, and I am grateful." I never thought someone like me could be cared for by a simple farmer and his family. Ramu felt a warm pride in his chest. Dask. He had never imagined that his life, so full of struggle, could hold such significance. Helping her had changed him. The woman's health continued to improve. She was able to walk freely around the hut, and even help in the small garden outside. Her energy returned slowly, and she started to laugh again at the small jokes Ramu or his siblings made. These moments brought happiness to the entire household. Ramu's mother often remarked on how bright the woman had become, and his siblings felt a sense of pride for helping her recover. The house, once quiet and tense, now had an air of hope and joy. Despite the progress, Ramu never let his guard down. He knew the bandits could return at any time, or the villagers could become suspicious. Every morning he checked the forest and the nearby paths for any signs of danger. He also taught the woman how to recognize potential threats and how to remain calm in emergencies. These lessons, though simple, gave her confidence and made her feel safer. It was a partnership built on trust, and both of them understood that vigilance was key to survival. As the days turned into weeks, the woman's strength returned fully. She could walk long distances, prepare her own meals, and even assist in the farm work. She and Ramu began to talk more freely, sharing stories, dreams, and small details of their lives.
Ramu admired her resilience, and she admired his honesty, courage, and unwavering kindness.
The bond between them deepened into a quiet friendship built on mutual respect and gratitude. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, the woman sat on the steps of the hut and looked out over the fields. She was strong now, but the memories of her journey and the bandits still lingered. Ramu sat beside her, offering comfort. "You are safe now," he said gently. "Nothing can harm you here." She leaned on his shoulder and smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace she had not felt in weeks. The simple days continued, filled with small joys, hard work, and cautious vigilance. Ramu knew that the woman's life had changed because of him, and he felt proud of what he had done. At the same time, he was aware that this was only the beginning. Challenges were still ahead, and the danger was not gone. But for now, he was content, knowing that she was healing and that his family had come together to protect her. Through this time, the woman learned about the simplicity of Ramu's life, the struggles he faced every day, and the courage it took to survive. Capacity. Dr. Draven's breaths rasped through the fluids, picked up with conscious. Ramlu sparked, and then showed her a strength that no crown or palace could provide.
That does as by gods. Maybe when I was just the only picked up on the ordinary people, and those who faced hardship without complaint
And so the days passed in the small hut and the surrounding fields. Ramu and his family continued to care for the woman, teaching her, helping her, and protecting her. In return, she brought a quiet joy into their lives, sharing stories, laughter, and hope. The bond between them grew stronger, built on trust, courage, and compassion, as each day brought them closer together. Little did Ramu know, the time he spent caring for the woman was about to lead to a change in his life, one that would bring unexpected rewards and test his bravery in ways he could never imagine. But for now, the simple acts of care, patience, and courage filled the days, making each moment a step toward a brighter future. Ramu had been caring for the woman for several weeks now. The forest around the village had grown greener with the rains, and the air smelled fresh and earthy. Birds chirped loudly in the mornings, and the soft buzzing of bees could be heard among the wildflowers. On the surface, everything seemed peaceful, but Ramu knew better. Danger was never far away. The woman, whom he now thought of as Priya, had regained her strength, but that also meant she could venture further, and the risk of being discovered grew with each passing day. One morning, as Ramu worked in the field planting seeds for the new season, he noticed a group of villagers approaching from the distance. They moved slowly, as if looking for something or someone. His heart skipped a beat. He knew the villagers had started whispering rumors about strange movements in the forest. Perhaps they were curious, or perhaps they had begun to suspect that something unusual was happening near his hut. Ramu hurried back home, leaving the work half done. He found Priya sitting near the small garden, gently watering the plants. Her hands moved carefully, showing her newfound strength and independence. She looked up as he approached and smiled faintly. "Good morning," she said softly.
Did you find something? Ramu shook his head. Nothing yet.
"But we need to be careful. Some villagers may be coming this way. Stay inside and do not make a sound. I'll handle it." Priya nodded, trusting him completely. She had grown to depend on his courage and wisdom, and he had become a steady presence in her life. When the villagers arrived, Ramu greeted them politely, hiding his worry. "Good morning," he said, smiling. "What brings you here so early?" One of the men, a native, leaned in slightly. "We heard noises in the forest," he said.
People say there's someone hiding near your hut. Have you seen anything? Ramu shook his head.
"No, I've seen nothing unusual," he said calmly. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he forced himself to remain composed. The villagers lingered, asking more questions, but Ramu managed to divert their attention with stories of his work in the field and the small tasks he had been doing for the day. After a while they moved on, though their suspicious glances made Ramu uneasy.
Once the villagers had gone, he turned to Priya. "We must be more careful," he said. "They are becoming curious. We cannot let anyone see you outside the hut."
She nodded solemnly. The threat of discovery reminded her of the attack by the bandits, and she felt a renewed fear of the outside world. Despite these challenges, life at the hut continued. Ramu and Priya began to spend more time together, talking quietly in the evenings after the day's work was done. Priya shared stories of her childhood in the palace, of the gardens, music, and festivals she had enjoyed. Ramu listened with wide eyes, imagining the world she described, a world so different from the dusty fields and humble hut where he had grown up. Ramu in turn shared stories of his life in the village. He told Priya about his small farm, the struggles he faced paying debts, and the love he felt for his family. Priya listened intently, amazed at his courage and resilience. She realized that bravery came in many forms. She had always thought of courage as something displayed in grand battles or heroic acts, but Ramu showed her that it could also be found in daily struggles, in protecting others, and in risking one's own safety for someone else. As Priya recovered, she became more curious about the forest and the village. Ramu allowed her to step outside cautiously, walking only a short distance from the hut. She marveled at the simple beauty of the wildflowers, the tall trees, and the flowing stream nearby. Each small walk was a triumph, a reminder that she was healing not just physically, but emotionally as well. Ramu stayed close, ready to shield her from any danger, and Priya began to trust that she was safe with him. However, the shadow of danger loomed ever closer. One evening, as the sun began to set, Ramu noticed fresh footprints near the edge of the forest. They were larger and heavier than the footprints of the villagers, and he immediately recognized them as bandits. His heart raced. The bandits must have returned, searching for Priya. He hurried back to the hut and found her inside. looking out the window with worry in her eyes. "We must hide," he whispered. "They are back. Stay low and follow my instructions exactly." "Bad." Priya nodded, her face pale but calm. She had learned to trust Ramu completely. He guided her to a small storage area under the floorboards, a secret place he had used for storing tools. He covered the entrance with a mat and sat beside her, keeping watch. The bandits approached the hut cautiously, moving quietly but deliberately. Ramu could hear their footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. He held his breath, praying that they would not discover the hidden trapdoor. The minutes felt like hours, and Priya clutched his hand tightly, her eyes wide with fear. Ramu whispered words of encouragement, reminding her to stay calm. After what felt like an eternity, the bandits seemed to give up. They wandered around the forest edge for a while, muttering to each other, and then disappeared into the darkness. Ramu waited a few more minutes before allowing Priya to emerge. But she was shaking slightly but unharmed. He hugged her gently, relieved beyond words. "Thank you for keeping me safe," she whispered. I don't know what I would have done without you."
Ramu smiled softly.
"You are safe now. That is all that matters," he replied. He realized in that moment that protecting Priya had become more than a duty. It had become a part of his life, a responsibility he would carry no matter the cost. The next few days were tense. Ramu reinforced the hut, checking doors and windows, and taught Priya more ways to stay hidden in case of another threat. They created a plan for emergencies, deciding who would hide where and what signals they would use if danger approached. Priya adapted quickly, understanding the importance of vigilance. Even in moments of fear, she remained calm and cooperative, showing a maturity beyond her years. Meanwhile, the villagers continued their curiosity. Some noticed Priya moving around cautiously and whispered among themselves. Ramu remained patient, deflecting questions and keeping the secret carefully. He knew that if anyone discovered Priya, not only her life but also his family's safety would be at risk. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but Ramu never let it show. He kept working in the fields, caring for Priya, and managing his small farm, all while remaining alert to danger.
One afternoon, while Priya was sitting by the stream near the hut, she began to speak about her future.
"I cannot stay here forever," she said quietly. "I need to return to my kingdom eventually. But I am afraid of what will happen if I leave this safety behind."
Ramu listened carefully. "We will find a way," he said.
"For now you must focus on regaining your strength. The rest will come later." Their conversations grew longer and deeper as days passed. Priya asked about Ramu's childhood, his dreams, and his hopes for the future.
He spoke honestly, telling her that his greatest hope was to see his family safe and happy.
Priya admired his resilience. She realized that he was not only strong in action but strong in heart, able to face challenges with patience and courage. One night, as they sat by the fire, Priya looked at Ramu and said softly, "You have done so much for me. I will never forget it." Ramu smiled humbly. "I did what anyone would do," he replied. Anyone would protect someone in danger. That is all there is to it. But inside he felt a quiet pride. He had discovered that courage was not about recognition or reward. It was about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. Priya's health fully returned, and she could move freely and confidently around the village. She began to explore the nearby forest carefully, learning to appreciate its beauty without fear. Ramu stayed close, always vigilant. They had built a routine together, working, caring, and protecting one another. It was a fragile peace, but it was real. and it gave them both hope. Yet, despite the calm, Ramu knew that danger could return at any time. The memory of the bandits was always in the back of his mind. He strengthened the hut, created hidden storage spaces, and taught Priya how to escape if necessary. Every precaution he took was a reminder that their safety was never guaranteed, and that life required both courage and wisdom to survive. Through all these trials, Ramu and Priya formed a deep bond of trust and respect. They did not need to speak constantly, for their understanding of each other had grown beyond words. Priya learned to depend on him, not only for safety, but also for guidance and comfort. Ramu, in turn, found purpose in caring for her, realizing that protecting another person could bring meaning to even the hardest life. The village continued around them, unaware of the secret that lay hidden in Ramu's small hut. Life moved slowly, with the changing seasons, the sowing and harvesting of crops, and the quiet rhythms of daily work. Yet, in the midst of this ordinary life, extraordinary courage and compassion had taken root. Ramu, the poor farmer, had become a guardian and friend, and Priya, the princess, had found safety and trust in a humble village. And so, life went on, balancing hope and fear, vigilance and care, survival and trust. Each day brought challenges, but also small victories. Ramu knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together, and that the choices he made now would shape the future for both of them. But for now, they continued, side by side, navigating a world filled with both danger and possibility. The days grew longer and warmer as the season changed, and the forest around Ramu's village blossomed with life. Priya had fully recovered from her injuries, and her strength returned completely. She walked freely, helped with chores, and even ventured a little farther into the fields and forest under Ramu's watchful eyes. Despite her recovery, she remained cautious, remembering the terror she had experienced during the attack by bandits. But with Ramu nearby, she felt a sense of safety she had not known in weeks. One afternoon, while they were collecting fresh vegetables from the small garden, Priya turned to Ramu and spoke quietly. "I cannot stay hidden forever," she said, her voice thoughtful. "I must return to my kingdom at some point. People are waiting for me, and they must know I am safe." Ramu nodded slowly, understanding the truth in her words. He had hoped for a quiet life, caring for her, but he knew she had responsibilities in a world beyond the small village. "I will help you," he said firmly. "We will make sure it is safe for you to go when the time comes." Over the next few days, Priya began to open up more about her past. She spoke of her childhood in the palace, of the music, gardens, and festivals that filled her days. Parents. The king and queen who had always cared deeply for her safety and happiness. Listening to her, Ramu realized how different her life had been from his own. He had grown up in struggle and hardship, yet he could not help but feel proud that he had been able to protect someone of such importance. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges, Priya sat by the fire while Ramu finished preparing a simple meal. She looked at him and said quietly,
"Ramu, I have something important to tell you."
"You have protected me and cared for me like no one else ever has. I want you to know that I am truly grateful."
Ramu shook his head gently. "You don't need to thank me. I did what anyone would do."
But inside he felt a quiet warmth, realizing that his efforts had made a difference in someone's life. A few days later, Ramu noticed a horse approaching the village. Its rider wore fine clothing that glimmered in the sunlight, and the figure on horseback moved with confidence and purpose. As the horse drew closer, Ramu's heart raced. He recognized the rider as one of the messengers from Priya's kingdom. The time had come for her to reveal her identity and return home. Ramu quickly brought Priya inside the hut. She looked at him, her eyes filled with worry. "Will they be angry?" she asked softly.
Ramu shook his head.
"No," he said. "You have done nothing wrong. They only want to make sure you are safe. Trust me." Priya took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly, but she nodded. She had grown to trust Ramu completely, and she knew he would guide her safely through this moment. When the messenger reached the hut, Ramu greeted him politely. The man bowed slightly and spoke respectfully. Princess Priya, your family has been searching for you.
They are concerned for your safety. Priya stepped forward, her head held high. I am here, she said clearly. I am safe, thanks to Ramu and his family. The messenger's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude.
We are eternally thankful to you, he said to Ramu. You have protected the princess at great risk to yourself.
Priya then turned to Ramu and her family, bowing slightly.
I cannot thank you enough, she said, breaths.
You have saved my life and given me hope when I thought all was lost. I will never forget your kindness.
Ramu felt a lump in his throat. Words had never been his strong suit, but he managed to say softly, I only did what I had to do. I am glad you are safe. The messenger nodded and left to prepare the journey back to the kingdom. Priya and Ramu spent the evening talking quietly about the days they had spent together. They recalled moments of fear, laughter, and small triumphs. The bond between them had grown stronger through the trials they had faced, and now it was time to face the next challenge, the return to her family. The following morning, Priya dressed in simple yet elegant clothing provided by the messenger. She looked radiant, a stark contrast to the frightened girl who had first arrived at Ramu's hut weeks ago. Ramu felt a mix of pride and sadness. He had grown used to her presence, and the thought of her leaving filled him with an unfamiliar emptiness. Yet he knew this was right. She belonged to her kingdom, and her family would be overjoyed to see her. As they prepared for the journey, word reached the village chief that someone important had been hiding in Ramu's hut. The chief was known for being strict and sometimes harsh, but he was also fair when he saw honesty and courage.
He approached Ramu, curiosity and authority in his eyes.
Ramu, he said, I hear there is someone of significance in your home. Tell me the truth. Ramu took a deep breath and explained everything. He told the chief about Priya's arrival, her injuries, the danger she had faced, and how he and his family had cared for her. He spoke honestly, leaving nothing out. The chief listened silently, his expression unreadable. Ramu's heart pounded in fear. He had expected anger, perhaps even punishment. After a long pause, the chief spoke. Ramu, he said slowly, you have risked your life to protect someone in need. You have shown courage, honesty, and loyalty. For that, I will not only forgive all your debts, but also support you in any way I can.
Ramu's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never expected such generosity.
The chief's words brought relief and joy that he had never felt before. Priya, hearing this, stepped forward. Ramu has done more than anyone could ask, she said. He has saved my life and protected me when I was most vulnerable. His bravery and kindness deserve every honor and more. The chief nodded, clearly moved by her words. He turned to Ramu once again and said, You have shown what it truly means to be brave and honorable. Your life is about to change for the better. With the chief's blessing and the messenger ready, Priya prepared to leave the village. The villagers gathered to see her off, many whispering about the courage of the poor farmer who had hidden a princess. Ramu's family stood proudly beside him, sharing in the moment of triumph and relief. Priya embraced each member of the family, expressing gratitude that went beyond words. As they mounted their horses and began the journey back to the kingdom, Priya turned to Ramu. I will never forget you, she said softly. You have given me safety, hope, and friendship. I will always remember your courage. Ramu nodded, his heart full of pride and a touch of sadness.
Be safe, he replied.
And remember, you are strong enough to face anything. The journey back was smooth, with Priya's guards ensuring that no danger came near. Along the way, Ramu reflected on the incredible journey that had begun with a stormy night in the forest. He had faced fear, protected someone of importance, and discovered the strength within himself that he had never known. The experience had changed him, teaching him that courage and kindness could transform not only the lives of others but also his own. When Priya finally returned to her kingdom, her family greeted her with tears of joy. They were astonished to learn of Ramu's bravery and the role his family had played in protecting her. The king and queen expressed their gratitude in person, praising Ramu for his courage and integrity. Priya promised to reward him and ensure that his family would never suffer from debt or hardship again. Back in the village, Ramu returned to his simple life, but everything had changed. The chief had forgiven his debts, and the princess's gratitude had brought him a sense of respect and recognition he had never known. His family was safe, his farm could grow without worry, and the quiet days of work now carried the satisfaction of accomplishment and honor. Ramu knew that life would continue with its daily struggles, but he had faced danger and proven his worth. He had protected a life, earned respect, and discovered that even in humble circumstances, ordinary people could do extraordinary things. Priya's return to the kingdom was the end of one chapter, but for Ramu, it marked the beginning of a new life filled with hope, respect, and endless possibilities. The villagers still whispered about the poor farmer who had hidden a wounded princess, telling stories of his courage and kindness. His name became known not only in his village but in surrounding areas as well, a reminder that bravery and honesty could create ripples of goodness far beyond one small hut in a dusty village. And though Priya returned to her palace, she carried Ramu's example with her, proof that true courage, kindness, and compassion could be found in the most unexpected places, and that even a poor farmer could change the course of a life in the most remarkable ways. After Priya returned safely to her kingdom, Ramu's life changed in ways he had never imagined. The chief of the village had kept his promise, forgiving all of Ramu's debts and providing tools and seeds to improve his farm. Ramu could finally breathe without the constant worry of owing money. He could focus on growing his crops and taking care of his family, without fear of punishment or harsh words from the chief. The small mud hut that had once felt cramped and inadequate now felt like a place of hope and possibility. Ramu's family noticed the changes immediately. His mother smiled more freely, relieved that the burden of debt was lifted. His younger siblings worked harder in the fields, proud to contribute to the family's growing prosperity. Even the small garden that Priya had tended during her recovery now flourished with vegetables, herbs, and flowers. Each morning Ramu would wake early and tend to the farm, feeling a sense of purpose and pride that he had never experienced before. Life, once so full of struggle, now carried the promise of stability and growth. Word of Ramu's bravery spread through the village and beyond. Villagers spoke of the poor farmer who had hidden and protected a princess, praising his courage and kindness. Travelers passing through the village would stop to hear the story, marveling at how a simple man could achieve such greatness through honesty and compassion. Ramu never boasted of his deeds. He remained humble, content with the knowledge that he had done the right thing, and that his actions had saved a life. One day a royal messenger arrived in the village carrying a letter from Priya herself. The letter expressed her heartfelt gratitude to Ramu and his family, acknowledging their courage and generosity. She wrote that she had told the king and queen of Ramu's actions, and that they were so impressed that they wished to reward him in every way they could. The letter also contained a gift, a small bag of gold coins and a set of tools for the farm, enough to expand their land and improve their livelihood. Ramu felt a mixture of awe and humility. He had never owned gold in his life, and the thought of using it to build a better life for his family filled him with happiness. With the new resources, Ramu worked tirelessly to improve the farm. He repaired the fences, tilled the fields more thoroughly, and planted new crops. He also taught his siblings to work efficiently and carefully, passing on the skills he had learned over years of hard labor. Slowly, the farm began to flourish. Crops grew taller and healthier than ever before, and the family had enough to eat, with extra to sell at the market. Ramu's life, once filled with struggle and worry, now held hope, stability, and the satisfaction of seeing the results of his labor.
Despite his improved circumstances, Ramu never forgot Priya or the days he had spent protecting her.
He often thought of her and wondered how she was adjusting to life back in the palace. He smiled at the thought that a simple farmer like him could have such a profound impact on someone so important. It reminded him that courage and kindness mattered far more than wealth or status, and that even ordinary people could create extraordinary change. Time passed, and the village continued to recognize Ramu's courage. The chief often spoke of him as an example to others, praising his honesty, bravery, and selflessness. Children would gather around Ramu to hear stories of the events in the forest, learning lessons about courage, compassion, and helping others in need. Ramu never told the story for personal glory, but he shared it to teach the values that had guided him. His reputation grew not because he sought it, but because people noticed his actions and were inspired by them. One day, the royal messenger returned with news from Priya. She had asked the king and queen to officially recognize Ramu and his family for their bravery. The royal family invited them to the kingdom to receive their thanks in person. Ramu was hesitant at first, unsure of leaving his village and family for such a grand event, but his mother and siblings encouraged him, reminding him that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be honored for his courage and service. With a mixture of pride and nervousness, Ramu agreed. When Ramu and his family arrived at the palace, they were greeted with warmth and respect. Priya personally welcomed them, smiling as she thanked them again for everything they had done. The king and queen praised Ramu, acknowledging his bravery and integrity. They expressed how grateful they were that their daughter had been protected and safe. Ramu felt a sense of pride that went beyond words. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and now he was recognized for his courage and the sacrifices he had made. The royal family presented Ramu with gifts, more tools and resources for his farm, gold coins to ensure his family's comfort, and even a small plot of fertile land to expand his farming operations. They assured him that he would never face debt or hardship again. For Ramu, the most meaningful reward was the recognition of his actions and the knowledge that his courage had made a real difference. That gold and land were important, but the respect and gratitude of others were priceless. After returning to the village, Ramu used the gifts and resources wisely. He expanded his farm, planting more crops and raising a few animals to provide additional food and income. The family's life became comfortable and secure, and their small home grew into a place of prosperity and warmth. Ramu remained humble, continuing to work hard every day, but the knowledge that he had been acknowledged and rewarded for his courage filled him with quiet pride. Ramu also continued to teach his siblings the values of honesty, courage, and kindness. He told them that true bravery was not about seeking recognition or fighting battles, but about protecting others, doing the right thing, and helping those in need.
His story became a lesson for the next generation, a reminder that even ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things through selflessness and courage.
Priya continued to write letters to Ramu and his family, sharing stories from the palace and thanking them for their care and bravery. She promised to visit whenever she could, and her letters became a source of joy and inspiration for the entire household. Through her words, Ramu and his family remained connected to the world beyond the village, reminded that their small acts of kindness had rippled far and wide. Years passed, and the farm prospered. Ramu's family lived comfortably, with enough food, money, and security to face the future without fear. Ramu never forgot the nights in the forest, the moments of fear, and the responsibility he had carried. Those experiences shaped him into a man of courage, compassion, and wisdom. He continued to live simply but with a deep understanding that true wealth came not from gold or land but from helping others and acting with integrity. The villagers often spoke of Ramu's story, telling it to children and travelers alike. The tale of the poor farmer who had hidden a wounded princess and protected her at great risk became legendary. People admired his courage, humility, and selflessness. They spoke of how a simple act of kindness could change the lives of many, reminding everyone that bravery was not limited to kings or soldiers, but could be found in anyone willing to do the right thing. Ram, though proud of the recognition, remained humble. He continued to work in the fields, care for his family, and live a simple life. But he did so with a quiet confidence that courage and kindness had changed his life, and that his story would continue to inspire others for generations. The bond he had shared with Priya remained strong, a testament to trust, friendship, and the power of selfless action. As the sun set over the village fields, Ramu would often sit outside, watching the golden light touch the tops of the crops. He reflected on the journey that had begun with a stormy night in the forest, the fear and uncertainty he had faced, and the reward that had followed, not only in wealth, but in respect, pride, and a sense of purpose. He smiled quietly, knowing that his life, once filled with struggle, had been transformed through courage, honesty, and compassion. In the end, Ramu's story was simple, yet profound. A poor farmer had hidden a wounded princess, cared for her with patience and courage, and faced danger without hesitation. In return, he gained not only the gratitude of a royal family but also the respect and admiration of his village, a stable and prosperous life for his family, and the knowledge that doing the right thing can create lasting change. Even years later, children in the village would hear the story and dream of the day when they, too, could act with bravery and kindness. Ramu's life became proof that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things, and that courage, honesty, and compassion are the greatest rewards of all. And so, the poor farmer who once struggled with debts and hardship lived the rest of his days in peace, prosperity, and quiet pride, remembered by all as a man whose small acts of bravery had changed the course of a life, and whose heart had made a difference that reached far beyond his humble village.